Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Self Carrie, your empowerment astrologer. I use astrology to dig deep into my own astrology chart and into the charts of my clients to help them use their natal placements and their transits to live their best life according to their original blueprint and their original truth. I work with people, I work with couples, I work with families, I work with companies. But I found as I was navigating some of the energy of after this election and the fallout and the aftermath and just everything that we're dealing with right now, that I felt this need to connect to people through all of the hate media, right? I want to just read a book. I want to just practice what I preach. And I have all these great books that I have, but I never get around to reading them. Whenever I want to calm down, I get on social media and I read a bunch of stuff that other people are thinking instead of figuring out what I'm thinking. So I decided to bring you in on this quest to read books. In fact, you're helping me more than I'm helping you. I basically want to read each chapter of the books that I'm reading here on YouTube so that you can keep me accountable to getting this book read. So this is a book that I've selected that I'm going to start with first. This is called The Enchanted Life. This is Unlocking the Magic of the Everyday, and it is by Sharon Blackie. Why did I choose this book? I went to the bookstore determined to get a book that I did not get offline or did not get through being online. And I was specifically looking for a James Baldwin that I hadn't read. And I found that none of the books in the bookstore were James Baldwin's that I hadn't read. And then I saw this. So that's how that happened. Okay. But it's actually kind of right on time. I staunchly believe that things happen for a reason. And this book came right before all of this stuff with the elections. And the desire I had at that time was almost like a prophetic desire to fall more in love with my own life, fall more in love with life and the mundane as I think my heart was having a preview of what I would need in the very near future. So I invite you to read this along with me. If you are enjoying this content, you want me to do more, please like and subscribe to this channel. That always lets me know that this is something you're interested in. And if you have some insights to this book or anything you want to share with me, or anything you want to share about your own enchanted life and how you make your life more enchanted, definitely leave me a comment below and I'll always make sure I get back to you. All right, everyone, without further ado, The Enchanted Life by Sharon Blackie. All right, number 1, enchantment matters. The wind at dawn has secrets to whisper. Don't go back to sleep. That is a quote by Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. All right. Imagine that you are entering a small wood on a Sunday morning in late spring. You've come here to walk. You have an immediate sense of well-being. How peaceful, you think, as you look around you. How pretty. The trees are lovely and the bird song is beautiful. There are ferns under the trees and bluebells. You turn your attention to them briefly and tell yourself how attractive they are. You check your watch as you set off down the gravel track. You have about a half an hour for your walk before you have to head home. You keep to the path. It rained last night and you don't want to get your shoes muddy. You shove your hands into your pockets. You keep your eyes straight ahead, mostly. Hold on a second. I lost my place. You keep your eyes straight ahead, mostly, but every now and again you look around you and tell yourself how nice it is to be away from the crowds and the traffic fumes. After you've been walking for a few minutes, you start to think about other things. You can't help yourself. Something in your head just takes over. You've been to mindfulness classes, but it never seems to stick. And most of the time, mindfulness seems a bit boring, to be honest. You hum the same notes of a tune over and over. You replay an argument you had with your husband yesterday and remind yourself how unreasonable it was, or how unreasonable he was. Interesting. Just how unreasonable he always is. The muscles in your stomach start to clench as you relive the irritation. You think of all the things you could have said differently and refine your sentences until they're the deadliest of barbs. Suddenly, someone else appears on the path ahead of you. Walking towards you, you jump and realize that you haven't taken in anything around you for the past several minutes. This is ridiculous, you think to yourself. I'm supposed to be walking through a wood, and you try to turn off the voices in your head. You begin to feel a little anxious because you can't. Your mobile phone buzzes, and though you briefly sigh for the impossibility of ever being truly lost in the world, you're really quite relieved to have the distraction of a text. It starts to drizzle, and you sigh again and hunch down into your coat. You start to walk faster. So much to do when you get home. And although it's nice to have this break from the vicissitudes of real life, the truth is that you just can't afford the time, really. You start to worry about how you're going to pay for the haircut your teenage daughter wants at the expensive new salon that just opened down the road. How she seems always to be asking for something you can't afford, and how inadequate that makes you feel. How you're going to pay for the summer holiday abroad, and you shudder, remembering the crowds at last year's airports. Whether the interest rates are going to rise in spite of all the government's promises. And then how will you pay your oversized mortgage? Suddenly, a large black bird, is it a crow, you wonder vaguely? Maybe a raven, flies across your path, right in front of your face. It settles on a low branch, looks you right in the eye, and squawks. For a fleeting moment, something in your head cracks open a fraction, and you glimpse it, a sense of wonder, a sense that the bird is in some way interacting with you. But then you shake the bird. Oh, no, I'm sorry. But then you shake your head and tell yourself not to be so silly. It's just a bird. For heaven's sake, you're making things up. And all at once, the feeling is gone. The bird flies off. You hurry on along the path and leave the wood feeling vaguely dissatisfied, looking at your watch and your heart sinking as you realize how little of the weekend is left. And then it'll be Monday, and you'll have to face the commuting crowds and 5 more days doing a job you hate before the weekend comes around again. And you have the chance to relax and take a nice walk in the woods. Hold on one second. My computer is hearkening me. And it's also a good time to take a little break. I will say, how many times has that been us? How many times has that been me? How many times has that been you? Find this time away where you're supposed to calm down now. And then when you're there, you are anxiously distracted from being able to calm down. Now, take 2. Imagine that you are entering a small wood on a Sunday morning in late spring. You've come here to walk. If you brought a mobile phone with you, it is on mute. There's a time and a place for gadgets, and your attention is on what is actually here. Right now, in this moment, yourself in this wood. You close your eyes and listen. Rooks chattering high up in the canopy, the warning call of a smaller bird, 3 sharp notes in succession. A few trees away, another bird replies. News of your arrival is spreading through the wood. The air is scented with bluebells, and you breathe in deeply. You are breathing in bluebells, you think, and you smile because that means the bluebells are part of you now. Or are you a part of them? There are nettles under the trees, and you have always loved nettles, ever since you heard the story of the wild swans as a child, about the girl who had to pick nettles with her bare hands and spin them into shirts to save her brothers who had been transformed into swans by a wicked stepmother. the hell is up with our fairy tales? Anyway, it was dramatic. You bought a ball of nettle yarn, which you found by accident in a wool shop you happened upon a few weeks ago. You're not quite sure what you'll do with it, but you like to finger it and remember that old story which even now pulls at your heart. It tells you that there's magic in the profoundly mundane. You can't see a nettle now or a swan without thinking of the girl in the story, locked into silence for all of the years it took her to complete her task. This is getting literal. Okay. Love and endurance, overcoming malice and injustice, and the wild magic of plants. And the one brother who had the unfinished shirt, the brother with one arm and one white wing, neither wholly man nor entirely bird. I have never heard of this story, but the hell? Like, this makes me so sad to think that there's a story about a girl trying to make shirts for her brother and he has one arm and then he becomes a bird, but not entirely. Okay. But a nettle is a nettle as well as a set of associations. Its growing tips make a fine and nutritious soup, and its fresh or dried leaves make a delicious tea. You don't need to pick them here. There are plenty back in the wild edges of your garden and in the city park. You step off the path and into the trees. You'd never get lost. In any place, the first thing you do is orient yourself in the world, as if there's some internal compass inside you, just as you imagine migrating birds must have. Your own personal true north. And besides, like Hansel and Gretel, you've laid down a trail of imaginary breadcrumbs, left a bit at the baby birch, right by the rock that looks like a giant tortoise. You touch everything gently as you walk. You are aware that under your feet, the trees and plants are communicating and interacting with each other through a vast underground web of fungi which connects them. You once read that resources are shared through this network: carbon, water, and nutrients. This isn't just a wood, it's a living, communicating ecosystem, and you are not in it but part of it. There is bluebell inside of you. The rocks scattered through the wood are the protruding bones of the earth. The stream over there, a vein, carrying its blood. That was good. The stone in that small clearing, a beautiful stone, multiple shades of gray and brown, covered in ivy and moss, looks as if it has a face, head tipped back, two closed eyes, and an open mouth, as if it's telling a story. You decide to call it the Story Stone, and next time you pass through the woods, you'll remember it and acknowledge it. You might even sit down and tell it a story yourself sometime, when there's no one else around to think you're crazy. Everything around you is vivid. All of your senses are fully engaged, and you feel at home in this wood. It knows you. You speak to the trees and stones each time you visit. They know your voice, and you watch the trees push out new branches, and the lichens creep slowly across the stones, little by little each year. It starts to drizzle, and you lift your face to the water that brings this place and you, life. It feels soft and clean. Suddenly, a crow flies across your path, right in front of your face. She settles on a low branch, looks you right in the eye, and squawks. You stop, look right back at the crow, and listen. Crow, you say, and hello. And a whole other world opens up inside you, layering the richness of its symbols and images on top of the physical world around you. Bobbed and the Morrigan, all those powerful crow goddesses in the old myths. Crow represents hidden knowledge, messages from the other world. Often it's a trickster. Clever birds. Crows and humans have always lived together. Is it any surprise that there are so many stories about them? You don't know what the crow is saying to you, but you know she is saying something. You know that she is counting you in. You stand respectfully, drinking in the blue-black beauty of glossy feathers until the crow flies away again, and then you walk on. And when you leave the wood to go home sometime later, you carry bluebell in your lungs and crow in your ears. I suspect that most of us would recognize something of themselves in that first account of a walk through the summer wood. I certainly do. I've been that person, spent a decade or more in that skin, stressed, fragmented, disconnected, a curiously disassociated play actor in a life I was never meant to be living. Contemporary life does that to all of us, or so we imagine. The unpalatable truth is, we do it to ourselves. We made this world. We're caught up in a great grinding machine of our own fabrication. And even if we're lucky enough to catch a glimpse of another way of being, to make out in the distance the indistinct shadows of people who seem to be free, all too often we feel that we're powerless to extract ourselves from the mechanism which we imagine keeps us secure. Whew. We might not like it, we tell ourselves, but it's what we know. And aren't we mostly safe in the streets, mostly, and warm in our little house boxes if we can afford to pay the bills? And fed, yes, of course, there are people who aren't. And of course, we wish them there was more we could do to help. And don't the trains still run, even if overcrowded and rarely on time? And when we're sick, we can get treatment, even though in some countries, only if we're lucky enough to be able to pay. And water comes out of the tap. Let's not think about the chemicals and the great world destroying power stations provide electricity so that we can have our TVs for entertainment and our gadgets to help us manage our lives. The disconnection, the constant nagging sense of something critical missing in our lives is just the price we pay for greater longevity, prosperity, and health. It's not so bad, really. I felt that. Did you feel that? I feel like I just got scolded. Anyway, and in one sense, it's true. On average, human beings in Western countries today are safer, healthier, and wealthier than any other civilization in the history of the world. And life expectancy continues to rise along with these objective markers of quality of life. But there's a catch. The statistics may try to persuade us that by these objective markers, our own thoughts and emotions about the matter, a quite different story emerges. Life satisfaction scores in many wealthy countries are surprisingly low, averaging just 5.7 on a scale from 0 to 10 in OECD countries. And in the West, for several decades now, there's been a relentless increase in mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. A 2014 study by the UK Office for National Statistics, ONS, for example, suggested that anxiety and depression affects at least 1 in 5 adults. Recently, a pre-existing trend towards alienation has intensified. Alienation from ourselves, our fellow humans, and the world we live in. I need a little hydration. In a 2016 ONS report, around 40% of adults reported that they did not feel a sense of belonging to the places where they lived. And in people under 24, the figure rose to a remarkable 50%. We imagine we're thriving, but we're not. We have allowed ourselves, as the price we pay for so vigorously enrolling in the prevailing Western cult of progress and growth, to become disenchanted with ourselves and each other and with our lives. But as modern life becomes ever more mechanized and the social, economic, and political systems we once considered to be robust become increasingly fragile, we find ourselves thirsting for something more to hold on to, for new stories to tell about who we are and what our place in the world might be. We're yearning for meaning, for ways to feel at home in the world. We long to see it as we once saw it when we were children. A world that's full of mystery, bursting with possibility. A world that will challenge us to become all that we could ever hope to be. And just like the protagonists in all of the finest old stories, even though we know that the journey through the world might not always be easy, we know that it will nevertheless be vital, vivid, and rich. But there's another critical, important dimension to this problem. Whether or not we imagine ourselves to be thriving, it's clear that the planet isn't. And that's because of us. Because our disenchantment with our own lives, with the systems and values on which human civilization has come to be based, extends to the wider world around us. We've fallen out of love with the world. It's clear from the way we treat it. When you love someone or something, you treasure them, you nurture them, you take care of them, you do all you can to ensure their well-being. Many of us might as individuals, but as a species, we don't do that for our planet anymore. We might appreciate the continued existence of far-off wild places and hope we get to visit them someday. We might value a nearby wood we like to walk in or past, love our dogs and cats. One is sitting at my feet right now. Light up when we watch TV documentaries of exotic animals in the jungles and savannas, sigh over a beautiful sunset, but we long ago ceased to imagine ourselves as real and engaged participants in the wider cycles of life on this planet. Amen. Aren't we humans after all? Aren't we uniquely possessed of reason and intellect, maybe even of souls, and so more valued than any other species on this earth? Because of this sense of estrangement from the rest of the world around us, a separation that, as we will discover, has its roots in the rationalist classical philosophy on which contemporary Western culture was built, we treat the planet and the other creatures which inhabit it alongside us as mere resources to be exploited. Let me read that again. We treat the planet and the other creatures which inhabit it alongside us as mere resources to be exploited. And we've taken that exploitation too far. The oceans are polluted and warming. The land is despoiled. The weather is wilder. The atmosphere is richer in greenhouse gases. And animal and plant species are dying out at an unprecedented and alarming rate. But the increasingly dire warnings from scientists and other experts about the consequences of human-induced climate change and environmental damage have little or no meaningful impact on the policies and practices of governments anywhere in the world. And not enough of us are holding them or ourselves to account. All of us together, collectively, are perpetrating these acts of violence against the planet that gives us life. The purpose of progress is our only religion. Unending consumption is our primary motivator. Unending consumption is our primary motivator. Whew. No wonder our psyches are wounded. Our growing modern malaise, anxiety, depression, disease, and dis-ease, a multiplicity of dysfunctions, springs in good part from our alienation from the natural order of the world and our natural selves. It can't possibly end well. Something has to change for our own continued existence and well-being, and the continued existence and well-being of the planet. We have to change. We have to change the way we approach our lives and to reconstruct our way of being in the world from the bottom up. We have to turn ourselves inside out. That's what this book is about. Learning to shrug off the chains of the old, sterile ways of thinking and being that have been instilled in us ever since we were children, and unburdening ourselves of the sense of alienation and dispossession that so often characterizes our lives. It's about the everyday magic of transformation. As the first person in our fictional world would, let's call her woman A, metamorphoses into the second woman B. So coming to feel a sense of wonder, kinship, and belonging to the world. I'm going to say that again. It's about the everyday magic of transformation. As the first person in our fictional would, let's call her woman A, metamorphoses into the second woman B. So coming to feel a sense of wonder, kinship, and belonging to the world. Above all, it is a practical guide to re-enchanting ourselves and the world around us. As a psychologist, I am very much aware that in order to begin thinking about how you might remedy a problem, it's important not only to correctly identify it, but also to understand where it came from. And so, as we make our way along the tangled path to re-enchantment, we will briefly encounter a few of the key thinkers and brush up against some of the key ideas that have been responsible for getting us into this mess in the first place. From ancient Greek philosophy to modern cognitive neuroscience, from Jungian psychology to anthropology, we'll craft an understanding of how we came to so profoundly rupture ourselves from the living world around us. And we'll also run into a handful of more recent thinkers who are trying to show us how we might readjust some of our most fundamental perspectives on the way the world is and our relationship to it. But at the heart of this book is a focus on the practical things we can do, the small and large changes we can make to the way we inhabit and experience the world, which will allow us to grow into a state of enchantment. I believe that enchantment is an attitude of mind which can be cultivated, a way of approaching the world which anyone can learn to adopt. The enchanted life is possible for everybody. In this book, I'll share with you my own experiences and the experiences of several men and women from around the world as they demonstrate how we can bring enchantment into every aspect of our daily lives. Because enchantment, by my definition, has nothing to do with fantasy or escapism or magical thinking. It is founded on a vivid sense of belongingness to a rich and many layered world, a profound and wholehearted participation in the adventure of life. The enchanted life presents here is one which is intuitive, embraces wonder, and fully engages the creative imagination. But it is also deeply embodied, ecological, grounded in place and community. It flourishes on work that has heart and meaning. It respects the instinctive knowledge and playfulness of children. It understands the myths we live by, thrives on poetry, song, and dance. I have lost my place. Hold on a second. There it is. It loves the folkloric, the handcrafted, the practice of traditional skills. It respects wild things, recognizes the wisdom of the crow, seeks out the medicine of plants. It rummages and roots on the wild edges, but comes home to an enchanted home and garden. It is engaged with the small, the local, the ethical. Enchanted living is slow living. Ultimately, to live in an enchanted life is to pick up the pieces of our bruised and battered psyches and to offer them the nourishment they long for. It is to be challenged, to be awakened, to be gripped and shaken to the core by the extraordinary which lies at the heart of the ordinary. Above all, to live an enchanted life is to fall in love with the world all over again. This is an act of choice, a leap of faith which is necessary, not just for our own sakes, but for the sake of the wide, wild earth in whose being and becoming we are so profoundly and beautifully entangled. And that ends the first chapter of the Enchanted life. Thank you so much for joining me and for dealing with the sun slowly setting. Thank you for putting up with the natural light, yes. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we got through that together. And I look forward to reading another chapter with you. If you found this really engaging and interesting and you'd like to watch more, please continue watching more. And please leave me a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you can be alerted every time I submit a new video, and leave me a comment below. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. In the meantime, take care.